Before we begin, we want to acknowledge that some stories and discussions in this episode of Radiant Resilience may touch on sensitive and potentially triggering topics. These may include themes of substance abuse and addiction, heroin use and overdose, emotional and physical childhood abuse, mental health struggles, self-hate and insecurities, recovery and relapses, divorce and relationship struggles. Our goal is to share real-life experiences in a respectful and empathetic manner, offering insights into the complexities of the human spirit and the journey towards resilience. However, we understand that some content might be difficult for listeners. We encourage you to prioritize your well-being and discretion when deciding to listen. Please remember this podcast is not a substitute for professional advice or support. If you find yourself needing assistance, we urge you to seek help from qualified professionals or trusted support systems. Your mental and emotional health is important to us. Thank you for your courage and for joining us in a space of understanding and compassion. Welcome back to Radiant Resilience, everyone. I have, for the second interview ever, a male guest today. Again, not by design, it just happened that way, but I'm really excited for this conversation today. I have with me Patrick Casey. Welcome, Patrick.
Hey, Tawny, thanks for having me.
Patrick has been sober and in recovery since the age of 19. After nearly 20 years of sobriety, years of therapy, reading self-help books, and going on spiritual journeys, he still felt like the young, wounded child of his youth, consumed with self-hate, pessimism, insecurities, anger issues, and constantly worrying about everything. While attending a live event that he discovered through a podcast, he admitted to a room full of people that he doesn't or didn't love himself and didn't understand why. He was introduced to new material that has completely shifted his life over the past 2 years, learned what has been at the root of his self-destructive actions, along with uncovering the exact nature of his misguided beliefs. He is an advanced registered nurse practitioner who has transitioned to personal coaching. He has 6 years of experience working in substance abuse treatment, and his mission is to provide men with a new structured process and a safe place where they can be vulnerable. I am so excited, Patrick. Thank you so much for coming on here. I'm going to let you start wherever you want to start with that journey because it sounds like a lot.
It's a mouthful. It's a
Age.
mouthful. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. I'll try my best not to cough either here. I just got over a little bit of a cough last week. I wasn't really sick, but just a lingering cough, which kind of comes with treating patients on a regular basis. You always get exposed to things.
Yeah, sure.
So that's how it's been for a long time. Yeah, so we could back up to childhood because obviously, like you said, I got sober at 19, which means I started pretty young. I started with
Yeah.
drugs and alcohol probably around 10, 11. So to
Wow.
back up, we'll get like some of the boring stuff out of the way. I'm the oldest of 3 children. I was born in South Florida in the Fort Lauderdale area back in January of 83. So the oldest of three, I have two younger sisters, neither of which turned out like me. So they were
Hey,
lucky.
I feel like that's my story too.
Yeah, neither of
In
them.
the opposite, though, I'm
The
kind of the
opposite, right?
golden child of
They're a
my
little more of a
family.
mess. Yeah, I'm the one who was a mess and they stayed out of, they got their own versions of trouble. It just didn't involve
Sure.
drugs and alcohol. Yeah, so basically I try to toe the line and I know you've had other guests on here before who try to do the same thing where we try not to throw our family under the bus and paint a really bad negative picture because all I have is my perspective. I have my perception of how my childhood was. My sisters might not have been exactly the same
Sure.
for whatever reason, right? The way I perceived things was I had a kind of an unsafe feeling in my childhood, if that makes sense. Like I just didn't feel safe, which I couldn't put words to that at the time. I just thought things were chaotic. I had to walk on eggshells. I wasn't really sure. I had to gauge the temperature of the room every morning when I would wake up and walk in the kitchen. Okay, what kind of mood is mom in today? And what's going on with dad today? And so what would happen would be, even from a young age, I was just mischievous. I was a big manipulator, a big liar. I was in trouble all the time. I was like the class clown. I always tell people I always sat at the front of the class and next to the teacher. It was always like, Patrick, come up here. You're sitting next to me because I was always in trouble. Again, I grew up in the 80s, and so we had chalkboards, and I would have to write on the chalkboard when I did dumb stuff. I'd have to stay after class, dust the chalk, or dust the erasers. I was always in trouble, always seeking attention. And I didn't know at the time. Back then, we didn't really diagnose ADD very
Yeah.
much back then. That's probably what it was. It was just Patrick's a bad kid. Patrick's just
Mm.
attention seeking. I didn't know, may or may not have been seeking validation, reassurance. And so I
Mm.
needed the attention, right? Because to me, growing up, any attention was good attention, right? So I was used to getting in trouble all the time. Holidays, birthday parties, I was getting in trouble, getting sent to my room, having tantrums, like all that stuff. I was chasing babysitters out of the house and getting them not coming back to ever babysit again.
Oh, wow.
Sometimes I would run out of the house and run down the street and they would be panicking, calling my parents. And so I was just kind of a little pain in the butt, right? But was it all my fault? I don't know. But some of it was, again, there's physical abuse, emotional abuse in the house. And so what would happen was an abuse, if you think about the abuse cycle, the abuse would build and build, it would erupt, and then there would be the makeup, the I'm sorry, consoling me, not going to happen again, or whatever the case is. And then the next day or a couple of days later, it might happen again.
Okay.
I never really knew, again, like what kind of trouble I was going to get into or not. I don't know. I can't really say 100% that's what led me to seeking feeling better. I just didn't feel okay. I didn't feel
Mm.
safe. And so when I started smoking cigarettes at 10, 11 years old, that was something different to do, right?
Yeah.
That was like, okay, I can get this little nicotine buzz and it changes the way I feel. It makes me feel cool. It makes me feel okay. I always tell people a fun Friday night for me and my friends was like walking around the shopping plazas, picking up those little cigarette butts that people would lay and smoking them. I
Oh
mean,
my gosh.
it's crazy. And now when I go visit we were talking about my sisters before we got on here, and I go visit my sisters up in Georgia, and I see my one nephew's 8 years old, my other one's 11, the other one's 13, and I'm like, I can't believe I was their age doing this
Yeah.
stuff. Because I
I
see
think
them
it's
now, they're such innocent
amazing.
little kids.
Yeah. And when you look back on that, I think that when I look back on different ages of my life, I think I felt older
Yeah.
in the moment, but then, yeah, same thing. I have a niece and a nephew. And when I look at my nephew is 12 right now, and I'm like, you're still a little kid, but at 12 in sixth grade, you're about to go into middle school and stuff. You feel so much more adult than you actually are. It's a weird psychological thing. I don't know
It
why.
is even like high school, right? You feel like high school. Oh, I'm a big kid and I'm an independent and adult. I have a driver's license, or then I'm 18. I can vote now and buy cigarettes. And now I see 16, 18-year olds. They might as well be 10 to me,
Yeah,
right? Because the older
yeah.
we get, they seem and look and act younger than
Even sports
I think
players
we
right
did.
now, that's what
Yeah,
I really notice now. I'm like,
yeah,
because for my whole childhood, they were like older and whatever, and they were. But now I'm like, I'm 36 years old, and I'm like, that kid is 18 and looks like he's 10
yeah.
in his face. Like, I'm like, they're so young.
Yeah, and you always see it. I live close to a Starbucks, and every day around 2, 3 o'clock when school gets out,
Oh,
they just
yeah.
swarm that place, and
Yeah.
they look like tiny little children. They're teenagers. It is the perception of it. So that was the thing I didn't really know at the time, Tawny. That was like I was trying to make myself feel better. I was seeking, searching. Some people could say, you were seeking a higher power, you're seeking a spiritual release or some kind of connection somewhere, right? Like maybe I didn't feel like I had that unconditional love connection at home. So I was seeking it through substances, through other people,
Interesting.
through getting in trouble, through again, any attention was good attention, right? Like stealing from 7-Eleven as a kid, stealing from the supermarkets.
Wow. Yeah.
I think luckily never got in any trouble doing that at a young age, but I did a lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
It progressed and I think I probably started smoking marijuana about 12 years old,
Okay.
which again is crazy young to think about now. So I started smoking marijuana at 12. And then we were again in Florida. My dad got a job up in Augusta, Georgia. So we moved from Florida to Georgia in 96. So I was 14 years old. Now it's the summer, like right before high school starts. So now I'm leaving the beaches of Florida to go to like Pine Trees and Golf Central in Augusta, Georgia, and start in high school. And I don't know anybody, right? I met a couple kids in the
So hard.
neighborhood. So now it's, I gotta go to this high school. And I'm already like insecure about myself. I already have low self-esteem. I'm already seeking validation and reassurance from everybody everywhere. Of course, I'm not aware of it at the time, but looking back, I knew that's what was going on now. And I learned that through a lot of the coaching work I did, which we'll get into later. So I go to high school and I'm like, okay, who do I fit in with? Where do I fit in? And I'm again 110, 20 pounds soaking wet, skinny kid, scrawny my whole life. And my friends told me later on, years later, when we got to know each other, they're like, man, we were scared of you because you just always walked around like with this angry, like
Oh,
pissed off look on your face. And that was I didn't realize that was my defense. I was putting my defense up.
yeah.
So again, who am I going to gravitate towards but people who are smoking marijuana, drinking alcohol, doing all the party scene, right? So that's who I gravitated towards. And I literally ran the whole gamut, literally with all the substances.
Wow.
And once I got my driver's license, I think into my sophomore year, when I was 16, I never went to a full day of school. I skipped school all the time.
Mm,
And furthermore, I always had some kind of substance in my body. I was always taking something. So
okay.
drinking alcohol before school, smoking weed before school, taking all kinds of different pills, drinking alcohol and taking pills. I got caught with whiskey at school one time. I got caught with marijuana at school another time. And I always had that talk with my dad. We're going to have the talk. And
Mm,
it never sunk in. It was never
yeah.
like, yeah, okay, that's yeah, whatever. Yeah, I'll be fine. I'm just a kid. I'm just being a dumb kid. It's fine.
Because as a
I,
kid too, you're not acknowledging the emotional side of it, and your dad just thinks you're misbehaving, and so he's just stop misbehaving, but there's no work being done on the emotional aspect of it of why you're reaching for those substances,
there's no therapy, there's no medication, there's no psychiatry, none of that
especially
stuff.
back then.
Especially back then, it wasn't really happening a lot, right?
Yeah.
And just somewhere along the lines, I got into some of the harder stuff. And so I don't really want to spend too much time on it. But eventually, I graduated high school rather, did really good, got like a 3.4 GPA somehow, even
Nice.
though I didn't go to school all the time. Yeah, and I got the Hope Scholarship in Georgia. If you graduate like a three something or higher, you get the Hope Scholarship. So college is paid for at least for a couple of years, I think, or a couple of
Amazing.
semesters. Yeah, they pay for your school. So I stayed local. My parents were like, you're not going to Georgia Southern. You're not going to Georgia State. You're staying home. We don't trust you. You're going to spend
Oh,
your first year here and you're going to prove to us you can be mature and responsible. Like, why are we going to spend all this money in tuition and boarded and all? And let alone, we don't want to let you out of our sight that long. And thank God they did that. I probably would have died if they did that.
oh man.
So I got into heroin, is what happened. That was what hit my rock bottom. I got into heroin at the age of 18, somewhere around the end of high school, or right after high school. And basically, what happened was I was buying this powdered stuff that, come to find out, was heroin while I was a little naive. And my friend was telling me it's like some crushed up opiates, right? I'm like, oh, okay, crushed opiates, no problem. So I'm snorting this stuff, getting high off of it. I run into a friend of mine from high school who just got out of rehab because he's going to be a great influence for me, right? So I'm like, hey,
Right.
Chris, where you been? He's, oh, I just got out of rehab. What have you been doing? I said, this and that. And he said, okay, can you get me a bag of that? I'm like, but did you just get out of rehab? He goes, yeah, but it's fine. It's fine. I'm like,
Mm,
no problem, man. It's a kid I played soccer with, and we were really close friends all through high school. So we met up one afternoon, and I get in his truck, and he's got a needle and a spoon. Kind of looks like a little kid at the dinner table, or like with dessert with a fork and knife, but it's a spoon and a needle. And I'm like, dude, what is this? This is what I do. This is how I do it. I was like, can I watch you? Now,
uh,
again, I'm up to this point where this is the next level, the next avenue of me seeking and searching and
yeah.
trying to feel better, trying to feel okay, trying to put those pieces together.
So did you feel like you were getting used to the previous stuff that you were doing and
Yeah.
it just wasn't doing it for you anymore? And so
Yeah,
you had to just
exactly.
keep moving to the next one, to the next one. I've
Yeah.
never done a lot of drugs, so I don't know a lot of that. So
Yeah.
sorry if that's a naive question, but
No, it
kind
is.
of how that
Well, and
seems.
then you would think at that age, you shouldn't be getting that kind of a tolerance to where like you're having to try
Uh,
something else, but I was.
yeah.
And again, alcohol was always around too. I'd always grab a couple of my dad's beers before I'd leave the house and
Hmm.
out of the garage fridge. It was very convenient, and
Hmm.
nobody was around, and then I could just have a couple drinks before we went and did anything. So alcohol was always around. I was always drinking, blacking out, waking up in weird
Hmm.
places, and but just the heroin was what thankfully for me I found, because at 19 I that accelerated my bottom, because had I not found that,
Hmm.
I would have eventually, something was going to take me down, but it could have taken longer. It could have taken DUIs, ruining families and
Yeah.
children, right? Like careers. Like I could have been the people I treat today in the treatment centers who are in their 30s, 40s, 50s,
Mhm.
60s trying to get sober. I could have been
Yeah.
those people if I would have even lived long enough. So I thank God every day that I found heroin, because it kicked me down really fast. So
That's wild.
just
That's
a
a
year
wild
of
thing to
doing
say,
that.
but
Isn't
I
that
totally
crazy?
get it.
Right.
Yeah.
If I haven't been through my pains and trials and tribulations, then not going to be the person I am sitting here in
Yeah.
front of you right now and able to help other people because I don't have that
Yeah.
story. I don't have that experience. Somebody who just read it out of a book and they're not going to listen
Yeah.
to me. They don't want to listen to somebody with a degree who reads it out of a book. They want to
Yeah.
listen to somebody who's been there, been in the
Yeah.
trenches, and I can show you how to get out because I
Yeah.
was there and I got out with the help from other people. So I watched my buddy shoot up the heroin and I was like, oh, dude, I want that. I want that. And I just stuck out my arm and looked away and he hit me and that was it. I was done. So
Mm.
that turned into a year of buying heroin, selling heroin, trying not to do the heroin, showing other people how to do it. Because now I'm thinking if I can get other people into this, then I can have other customers and then I can buy and sell heroin to them. And then I don't have to buy any heroin. Then I can just do the heroin. So this whole vicious,
Yeah.
stupid cycle going on. And so what happened was to get out of that part of the story is my parents were in this bowling league they did every Friday night. And I was at home watching my two younger sisters and they're like, watch the kids, we'll be back. Okay, no problem. And it was a very uncharacteristic night for me, the way that everything went down. Because normally I had my little kind of almost routine, like where I would do it. I would maybe shoot up in the bathroom, maybe in my bedroom. Why in the hell this night I decided to do it in the living room of our
Mm.
bonus room is beyond me. I don't know why that even happened, but I'm sitting on the couch. My sisters are in the room or doing whatever, playing somewhere in the house or going to bed probably. And I shot up. And next thing I know, I wake up however many hours later to my dad violently shaking me and my mom yelling and screaming in the back. And I'm just like, what is going on? And they found me, needle in my arm, belt tied around my arm, all the stuff laid out on the table, just totally uncharacteristic of me to do something like this. And
Yeah.
it, looking back, it was my way of manifesting getting help
Oh, okay.
because I've been wanting to get help for 6 months. I've been trying to find Tawny out. I was like, what can I say or how do I ask for help? Because I don't want to tell them I'm doing heroin and doing this gnarly, nasty stuff. Like, how do I tell them I need help? I tell them I have a
Mm.
drinking problem. Do I tell them I have a problem taking Percocet painkillers or something? Somehow I need to get help. And I just could never muster the courage to do that, to ask for help. As miserable as I was every single day, getting dope sick every single day, that finally had to happen. So that happened the way that happened. And so what happened was I woke up the next morning, like in a fog, going, did that happen last night? Was this a dream? Was that a nightmare?
Yeah.
Like I'm in my room, like I would think it seems quiet and calm. And I go downstairs and my mom's on the kitchen landline calling rehab centers. And I'm
Yeah.
like, oh
Did they
shit.
know? Do you think they knew more than you thought
They
they knew?
knew something,
Yeah.
obviously not to that extent. My mom had caught me plenty of times with marijuana. They caught me drunk. I don't think she knew I was tripping really hard one night when I came home, and she was giving me the business one night when I came in after curfew. But I don't think they ever knew to what extent. They were just like, yeah, we knew something. You were not quite right. We just didn't know really what it
Mm.
was. So, and again, they were married, involved, like always around. My dad coached a lot of my soccer teams and sports teams, and they came to all the events and all the sports. Like, it's not like they weren't present.
Yeah.
So I was just,
And probably as a
I was
parent,
pretty good
though,
at it.
yeah, as a parent, though, you also don't want to believe your kid's doing that stuff. So
That
there's
too.
probably a bit of denial in it.
That too, which is what we always talk about, right? Denial. That's always a
Yeah.
big one, whether it's for the addict, alcoholic, or the family or the
Oh, the
loved ones.
family. That's a
Yeah.
whole, yeah.
Yeah, because you're having to treat the family too, because
Yeah.
us as addicts and alcoholics, we also make the family sick. We have them worry and just not sure if we're going to come home at night, or not sure if the phone call is going to be the police, or not sure if the police are going to show up at the door and say, "Hey, so and so is passed away, like or in a bad accident or
Yeah.
arrested." So we always have the family worrying once they know how bad off we are. Charles, train of thought. So we were
Mom was on the phone with
Mom
the
was on the
rehab center.
phone. Yeah. And they were like, okay, let's get him in. And about 2 days later, I ended up going to rehab. And oh, what had happened was when I went downstairs and my mom was on the phone, I had this immense sense of relief of
Oh, interesting.
like it's done. It's over. Finally. This is not
Mm.
the way I had it painted
Hmm.
to play out, but this is what getting help looks like, it seems. This is how it's going to go. Because like I said, I really believe I manifested it out of the uncharacteristic way that everything led up with the events. That like I needed and wanted this to happen so bad that what I believe to be as my higher power, the spirit of the universe, had it all shake out that way. And so it was like, okay, here you go. We're going to do this for you before you kill yourself. So
Hmm.
that happened. And then I went off to the rehab and I walked into the doors of the rehab a couple of days later. And that feeling just stayed with me. That feeling of just, this is great. This is great. I'm 19. I don't know what this means. I'm not even thinking, oh, I'm never going to drink again. I'm 19. I haven't even had a legal drink of alcohol yet.
Yeah.
Granted, I've had a lot of trouble with alcohol and done a bunch of dumb stuff, but I haven't even had a legal drink yet. And how am I going to get married and not drink? And what about when I turn 21? And like I'm thinking all this stuff, right? It's just the heroin. I have these blinders on, this tunnel vision of let's just not do the heroin. Everything else will be fine.
Oh.
So that's what I believe. And so it took a while for it to really sink into me that no, 100%, no
All
complete
of it.
abstinence, no substances, anything that's going to trigger me and set me off. I'm not going to risk it. I don't want to be one of these older guys that come to this place. Like, I'm 19. Let's do
Mm,
this now. Let's get this done. I'm a miserable SOB anyways. All I really want is love and attention and
mm,
connection anyways. And I started getting that there and started getting that moving forward. So it was like, I changed from the person who needed to do those things just to make it through the day, just to get by, just to feel okay in my skin. I changed to a person who I have this now. Every day I wake up, I'm good. I'm awesome. I have this higher power in my life now. I have people who are like living good, positive lives now. I have no reason to have a drink. I have no reason to have a hit of weed. That has no enticement
mm.
for me whatsoever. I'm not tempted in any way. Not that I'm cured. I could have a beer tomorrow and then it's probably going to set off the whole chain reaction. And I don't
Yeah.
want to risk it. Maybe not, but I don't want to risk it. There's no risk. There's no reason to do that.
How long were you
Um,
in rehab for?
so I was in rehab for 46 days. And
Okay.
then I went to a halfway house for about 6 or 7 months.
Oh,
And then
wow.
me and some other knuckleheads like me all moved into a place together. And then we split apart so we could live in smaller apartments and then two and two. So I was living with like other guys like me early in sobriety for 5 years, probably the first 5 or 6 years.
I'm pretty fascinated by you because at 19, to recognize that you wanted the help desperately, you wanted to
Mhm.
change, and then go through the rehab. Because I think, isn't there, I don't know the exact statistic, but there's something where people usually go to rehab, you probably know it, multiple times before they actually get
Oh,
sober.
yeah. It's very low percentage chance that you're going to be successful your first time through. Very
How many
low.
times do people usually have to go?
Can't
I'm
even
sure it's all
say.
personal, but
I can't say, yeah. I treat many people who are like, this is my 20th, this is my fifth, this
wow.
is my third, this is my first. And sometimes they get it. And other times they just have to keep beating their head against the wall. And this is if they even live long enough. I can't tell you how
Mhm.
many people it's like, hey, you remember so-and-so? Yeah, they're dead. Hey, remember so-and-so? Yeah, they're dead. Hey, remember so-and-so?
Um,
Yeah, they had a DUI, killed somebody, and they're in jail now. We hear it all the time. And especially now with the fentanyl that's out on the streets the last
mhm.
3+ years. These people are dying. They come to treatment, they get cleaned up, their tolerance comes way down. They leave, they go do maybe as much as before, or you never know what kind of batch is being
Yeah.
circulated out on the streets. They do just a little bit, right? And they're done. That's it.
Mm,
So it's so sad and so scary and so it's depressing to be like, and then you question, what could I have done different? Was there anything I could have done? And I
mm.
know at the end of the day, if you don't want the help, you're not going to get it. Like we could strap you down to the bed and you're eventually going to find a way out.
So I think that's an interesting thing too, because as I've never struggled with addiction in that regard to substances, but a lot of people in my life have, and I've heard the stories over and over. And to me, it seems like if you're going to rehab, you've hit rock bottom, you've decided you want to change. And so to me, it seems like they want the help. They're going there, but I know that in a lot of cases, families make them go,
Mhm.
spouses make them go, things like that. Is that the primary reason it doesn't work? Is because they didn't want to or they didn't do the work themselves? What is it about that?
I would say it's probably the denial and the
Ah,
ego. I think the ego,
ooh.
I don't think they really hit bottom. I think the ego is so big, it's I'm not the same. I'm different. So many people say, I'm not as bad off as this person. I'm not bad
Mhm.
off as that one.
The
So
comparison.
they're comparing instead of identifying. Instead of identifying, like
Mm,
me at 19, how am I like this 60-year-old who says, hey, Patty, I've spilled more beer on my tie than you'll ever drink. It's
mhm.
yeah, cool, I get it. But I had the same emotional disconnection, the
Wow.
same feeling where I could walk into a room full of people and feel completely, totally alone,
Mm,
complete overwhelmed with social anxiety, whatever the case is.
mm,
And so they spend this time comparing how they're not alike. And I just said, they're not done yet. They're not done yet for whatever
yeah.
reason. And they might have been to jail X amount of times. They might have ruined X number of families. Their bottoms may be way deeper than mine ever was, even close to. But I had that emotional, spiritual bottom. And I think until they get the emotional, spiritual bottom, the materialistic, physical bottom is not always enough. And I never judge anybody for their
Yeah.
motivation for getting to treatment or clean
Sure.
or doing that, because I know just stick around long enough and let the light bulb click. So you could be here because the judge made you. You could be here because your wife made you. I don't care. I don't care if you don't
Yeah.
want to be here. Sometimes the most defiant, obstinate ones end up having the most success because it's
Oh,
almost like this pendulum, right? Just like emotions. If I have the capacity to be rageful, out of control anger, I have the capacity for the pendulum to swing that much further on the other side
mhm.
to be completely peaceful and serene. So if the
Yeah.
pendulum swings with addiction and recovery or being abstinent or obstinate, it's the same exact thing. They
Yeah.
can get it. And I've had a lot of friends who were those people. So I know like they
Yeah.
didn't come to recovery with good motives and intentions, but
Mhm.
doesn't mean they can't get it if they just stick around long
Sure.
and they get cracked open somewhere along the way. And it might just be that one person that's able to penetrate that armor, just
Yeah.
like a little thing that they say or do, or just giving somebody a hug or just putting your hand on someone's shoulder. It's, oh wow, I matter. Like you're treating me like I'm a human being. People tell me that all the time. Like you're a much more personable practitioner than any I've ever dealt with before. And it's because I've been there. And I don't even tell them I'm in recovery. They don't even know most of the
Yeah.
time. I
Yeah.
don't disclose that unless it's like kind of life or death, or if they ask me, I don't lie about it, but I don't just disclose. I try to keep those things separate. But
Sure.
you treated me like a human rather than just
Mhm.
another number. And I've been to X number of treatment places. And so that helps. And then that can push them, nudge them along a little bit to allow other people to now help them. Because now it's, oh wow, I friggin' matter. That's crazy. I've never felt like I mattered before. And that's a sad place to be. But
Yeah.
you can see, why would I want to get clean and sober if nobody makes me feel like I matter, or I don't allow people to make me feel like I matter?
Yeah. I think that's important for a lot of different types of medical help that we have, right? Like when somebody's been through something, you have a lot more empathy
Hmm.
for the people that are going through it. I've experienced it at the infertility clinics. Like I have nurses who have never been through it, who don't understand it, and they'll just say the most insensitive things, and you can tell who has and who hasn't been through it and the way that they handle the situations with you. And I think especially I only speak to it because it's my experience with the infertility world. There's just a lot less compassion than there should be for something that's so hard. And I imagine the rehab and recovery stuff is probably a lot similar.
Yeah, because and you said in your first episode, like I felt like I'm broken, like something's wrong with
Mhm.
me, and
Yeah.
it's a loneliness that you can't describe because you feel
Yeah.
like you're the only one that feels this way, and you're around people who aren't having that experience. So how can your friends who are having children and families and et cetera empathize? Like they can say, "Oh, I feel bad for you," and I hate that for you, but they don't really know the actual feeling.
Yeah.
So if you're an addict or an alcoholic and you're unable to really put into words like why I keep going back and doing this, like I don't want to, I don't mean to, but I have to.
Mm.
I don't want to. It's not that I love alcohol more than I love you, but I just have to do that. And it's not that I love alcohol more than my children, but I just have to. And I have to get out of that cycle. And then once I do, now I can put you above the alcohol and drugs because I no longer need that just to breathe.
And do you think
I
that's
feel like I'm suffocated.
mostly the emotional aspect of it? Is
Yeah,
that
I
it
think
all
so.
comes down for all substance abuse? It all comes
Yeah,
down to your emotional state and what you're going through because it's a numbing thing mostly,
it's
right?
numbing, right? It's
Hmm.
numbing, right? And I did a course a while ago, like my first webinar, which was really fun to do, which was about self-destructive patterns, right? Like breaking through those. And I talk about not just alcohol, not just drugs, like gambling, sex, spending money, workaholic,
Oh yeah,
whatever,
that's a big one.
sugar, right? Eating a bunch of sugar, like anything that I can do to just numb myself. And what am I doing? I'm distracting myself from what's really going on. Maybe I can listen to podcasts 24/7 because it's keeping me over here instead of keeping me in my body and in my
Mhm.
soul and my emotions to focus on myself. So maybe I'm reading self-help books all the time and doing all this stuff rather than like doing the real work. And so it's just
Yeah.
all distraction. Maybe I clean the house way too much and whatever the case is, right? Like we all have
Yeah.
our vices and
Yeah.
sometimes they can be destructive and sometimes not. But what it really comes down to ultimately, I think it's addiction to control. I have an addiction to
Mm.
controlling the outcomes, the circumstances of everything. I want to control how this interview goes. I want to control how many patients I see today and for how long it takes me to see. I want to control how I can get done at this certain time so I can go to this next thing. I want to control how traffic is going to flow. I want to control how people talk about me and think about me. Like I just want to control everything because
Mm,
I don't feel safe or I feel
yeah.
insecure and I don't feel okay with myself. So I have to control everything and keep all these things, all these balls in the air just to make me feel okay. And
Yeah.
then because if I'm not doing all this, I'm stuck with me.
Mm, yeah. Which
And
is scary
is
for
that
a lot of
okay?
people. Yeah.
Yeah. Is that an okay thing to be with me? Am I
Mm,
okay with that? A lot of
mm,
times, no, I'm not. But
yeah.
today I am because of the work I've done, right?
Right.
But for a long time, no, it can't be quiet because if it's quiet up here, it's just running and running in my head.
Can you talk about some of I guess you said you wanted love, you wanted attention.
Mhm.
Were you just telling yourself you weren't worthy of any of those things, or what was going
Not
through your head in those?
Not consciously.
Yeah.
I don't never consciously. I think that I say that it would be little, well, not really little, but at the time they seemed like little things. Like I'd see myself in the mirror and I would just flick myself off. If I saw
Oh.
myself in the mirror, I would just look at myself in the mirror, and be like, "You effing blah 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 blah," whatever the case was. I was just a really brutal, horrible person to myself. And
Mm,
so I learned through the work I did with my coach a couple years ago was like pinning down and figuring out what are my core wounds and why do I have those. And again, like we talked about, it's all from childhood.
yeah.
Whether it was done on purpose or not, it's my perception of my childhood. So anytime that I feel triggered, which is normally like if something happens and I feel like I want to fight back, get defensive, withdraw, I'm having a trigger happen, right? Something's
Mhm.
triggering me. And so I came to find out was my core wounds of they're all pretty similar, really funny enough. My top three are like feeling defective, feeling
Mm,
disapproved of, and feeling rejected.
okay.
So if I'm doing something and you react or say something in a certain way, and if I'm in that kind of victim mindset, I'm going, oh, you're rejecting me right now.
Mhm.
I'm going to show you, or you're rejecting me. You're right. I am really that of what you say. And I'm going to like just internalize that and beat myself down with that. Or, oh, or you disapprove of me. You don't approve of what I'm doing or approve of the way that I'm doing it. I'm going to internally turn that on myself. And then I'm going to just wear myself out with just all the negativity that happens with that. And
Yeah.
so there's that whole synapse that happens basically like a three-step thing, right? Like I get triggered, my core wound is activated, and then I have an emotional response. And then usually there's a physical action that takes place after. And that might be that I get defensive, fight back. It might be that I withdraw, I isolate, or I
Mm,
people please. That's a big one too, right? Us
mm,
people who don't really feel good about ourselves, we people please, which is
mm,
really the most biggest untruthful, dishonest thing you can do because I'm only being nice to you because I want you to like me or I want other people to see and build up that false ego that I have because I want to overcompensate for how little I feel about myself.
mm.
So I people please, make
Yeah.
everybody happy and make sure everybody's okay because if you're okay, then I can be okay rather
But
than
it's
just no,
usually at the expense of yourself.
every time, because otherwise, it's no, you have your life and your feelings, and I have my life and my
Mhm.
feelings, and we're not always going to experience things the same way. But
Yeah.
let's if I can invite people over to my house, I have a house party or whatever, I got to make sure, are you good? Are you good? You got enough to eat? Is this that? How are you over
Mhm.
here? Is that comfortable? Da, da, da. Rather than just like sitting back and be like, hey, yeah, cool. Come on over. Let's hang out
Yeah.
yourself, make yourself at home, get whatever you want. So I can go either direction. And it's all based
Yeah.
on like where I'm at that time.
Yeah.
So yeah, figuring out the core wounds was big. But then it's also now what do I do with that? Because
Ah.
it's like the addiction, right? Like I can tell you're an alcoholic or addict, and if you put anything into your body, you're going to set off this allergy, and then you're going to be off to the races. Okay, thanks for the information. Bye. That's not enough. So just knowing my core wounds wasn't enough. It was my coach giving me a lot of stuff to do
Mm.
to make up for that. And a lot of that was like doing scary things. I always say I do hard things. So
Yeah.
if I do hard things, right, I find out and my brain goes, okay, that didn't kill you. It wasn't really that bad. You could do that again, or now you can do this other thing. So I've done a lot of like really scary things over the last 2 years that I would not have otherwise done if it wasn't for this work and me hitting another emotional bottom 2 years ago just like in my addiction where it's like, okay, I need to do something different. I'm going to go do this. I'm going to go work with this coach. Just like, at 19, I needed to go to rehab and get help. Now I'm going to go work with this coach and get help again. Even though
Mhm.
like on the outside, you would think I got the perfect life. I got it all together. We don't know on the inside. I'm still doing those cruel things to myself. Again, not to the extent that I was years ago, but it's still not where I really want to be at 20 years sober a couple years ago. I was married and divorced, and a lot of that was my fault because I wasn't really the man I thought a married sober man should be. Like still having anger problems and
Mm.
hostile and the masculine feminine power struggle between me and my ex-wife, like a lot of that stuff. And it just wasn't meant to be. And now I'm in like a beautiful, amazing relationship the last 7 years. But I had to learn all those lessons about what
Mm.
not to do. And now I
Yeah.
know what to do. And it's been just a night and day awesome experience. But I had to learn. I just, for some reason, Tony, I always have to learn stuff the hard way. I just always have to learn the
Well,
hard way.
some of us are programmed that way. I mean, I think
Yeah.
there's probably stuff that we all have, like certain things we all have to learn the hard way, but some people have to learn real big things the hardest way possible.
I think it
So,
sinks in a lot deeper, like really
um,
solidifies the foundation when you do it that way.
yeah.
So yeah, so I've been able to take some of this stuff and take it out into the world and say, hey,
Mm.
if you want to try this, and she taught me a lot, but it was also like having to push it, and I did a lot of it in a group setting, a
Ah.
group coaching setting. So I had other peers, we could all mirror each other and support each other and push each other, right?
Mm.
And so I got into boxing at 37 years old. I'm 41
Nice.
now. So I had like my first couple boxing matches while getting coached, which is the scariest thing I've done, jumping out of airplanes, doing a bunch of podcasts like this, which I was like, what the
Mm.
hell am I going to do a podcast for? Hear me talk. I did a couple online courses, which is a scary
Mhm.
thing to do where you're talking into a camera screen and you don't know, because it's easier when you're talking to people and you can see them and make eye contact and get reactions. When you're talking into a camera screen and you don't know if anybody's paying attention, listening, getting any feedback, getting that reassurance, that's a very vulnerable feeling. So you really got to have confidence or just keep pushing through it. So every time I do these things, I show myself, okay, you can do this. Okay, you can do this. So it's that neuroplasticity thing that
Yeah.
happens where the more I do things, my brain doesn't panic and overreact like it was
Yeah.
the first couple times I did those things. And so then I can, guess what? Now you can do some other things that
Yeah.
maybe you're thinking like, oh, I'll never do that. But no, just go do it. Go live life.
Yeah. It's so short. I think it's interesting. I want to go back to you talking about what to do with all of those emotions. So you went to rehab. And I think this is probably true for a lot of people is you're in that environment, you're living there, right? I
Yeah,
think that's the
yeah.
type you did. Yeah. So you're in that environment with a bunch of other people that are going through the same thing and you're working through that stuff. And I can see people being like, oh yeah, okay, I got it. We're good. And then you have to go back out into the real world again. And you're exposed to the same friends you had before in the
Hmm.
same community. And I think it's really important to focus on that because I think you're right. Like you were taught the things, you're like, all right, I can take on the world. And then, oh, wait, this is real life. And I don't have that support as much as I did before. So I think that's really important. How did you find, was it primarily working with the coach or like when you got out of rehab, how did you figure that stuff out?
That's where we always say this is where the rubber meets the road. Like we can give you all these tools, but first off, are you going to use the tools? And
Yeah.
then second, who are you going to use the tools with, or who's going to continue to show you how to use those tools? So for me, I was really fortunate because it was, if I had it my way when I was in treatment, I was going, okay, I got to go back to Augusta. I got to go be a good brother. I got to go be a good son. I definitely got to go get that ex-girlfriend back. I got to show her that I'm a better guy now, right? Like I got to repair all this stuff.
Yeah.
And my mentors and everybody was like, dude, slow down. You're
Mm.
19.
Yeah.
They're not going anywhere. If you don't get this and really make this work, none of that matters. All that's going to go away anyways.
Mm.
If you even stay alive at the pace that you were going, none of
Mm.
that matters. Let's sit down. Let's make a pros and cons list. Let's figure out, do we stay here in Atlanta where you've been for the last 46 days, getting to know some sober people and building a little bit of a network and a foundation? Or do you go right back into the same exact environment, the same house, the
Mm.
same traumas and triggers and everything that you haven't
Yeah.
really had a lot of time to really work through yet, just
You
because you
just scratch
feel
the
the need
surface,
to do
really.
that? Barely, yeah,
Yeah.
barely nicked it. So stay here, figure. And so I did it on my own, make the pros and cons list. And so when I write things down, just like when I journal, I do an appreciation journal or I write any kind of stuff down or goals lists and stuff. When I write it down in pen and paper, it's in my handwriting. It's there's some kind of connection that happens for
Mhm.
me. That's okay. I can't ignore this now. And so
Yeah.
for me, it was just the balance scale just tipped all the way to we're going to keep our ass here in Atlanta and see how this goes just for a couple months. So that's what, and then it turned into I never went home.
Yeah.
So it was like I ended up spending my first 10 years sober in Atlanta, living as an adult, trying to figure things out, working jobs, and then going to nursing school and then nurse
Which is
practitioner, like,
hard in itself, all of that.
which is crazy. Yeah. So it's like, why am I going to go home and try to fix and repair stuff if everything you just gave voice to? And I think that's where a lot of people do end up coming back to see us now in these treatment centers because they want to go back home. They want to go do this instead of doing like phasing down a little bit, where it's like you're enmeshed in living in rehab for how a month or for in my case 46 days to then being taken out and thrown right back into society.
Yeah.
It's very vulnerable.
Yeah.
It's very difficult. Like lights are brighter, smells are different. It's really easy. Like it's easy to get overstimulated when you're in a crowd of people, you're out in public places because you're just so fragile and vulnerable, still like timid, trying to figure things out. So let's take it easy. Let's do a little gradual process. I went to the halfway house and I committed, okay, I'm gonna do this for 6 months. And my
Yeah.
parents were gonna pay. And then I said, I'm gonna get a job here and I'm gonna try to pay for half of it and half of the rent.
Nice.
And that's what I did. And it started like taking ownership. And like anybody knows, if you are financially invested in something, you're gonna do a lot more with it and take it more serious. If I'm
Yeah.
actually paying for some of my school or paying for a place to live or paying for a car, I'm gonna take better care of it than if you just bought it for me.
Yeah.
So
I think that's probably a deterrent though for some of the rehab stuff too, because our healthcare system isn't that great for that stuff. A lot of people aren't in a position where they can afford that kind of stuff or afford the aftercare and stuff like that. They're like, okay, I got to go do my 30 days and then I've got to figure it out on my own because I don't have the money to continue.
or I got to get back to work. I got to get back to
Yeah.
this. I got to get back to that. So it's
Family.
all those reasons
Hmm.
why they're putting the potential for recovery or relapse ahead of everything else because they think, again, maybe the ego is so big, they think I got this licked, I'm good, I got a month under my belt, I'm cool now. And then a lot of times they're like, oh wow, that was bad. I did not handle that well at all. And they come back and I'm always like, hey, so what happened? Hey, what happened? Hey, so what happened this time? And it's a lot of the same things. Or they were doing their recovery stuff or their therapy, whatever. And then it's what happens? Life got good, all that stuff started to fall away. I got complacent. And then one next thing, something set me off. And what do? My default is when I get triggered, I go do something destructive. So that's what I
Yeah.
do.
I imagine recovery is a constant work in progress, right? Because life is still happening and shit's going to happen and
Mhm.
something's going to knock you down, whether it's something simple too, lose a job or you lose a family member or you
Yeah.
get divorced. There's all sorts of things that could easily send you spiraling back to that place. So it's a
Yeah. And
constant
I
work
went through
in
all of it,
progress.
but
Yeah.
all of those things happened, thankfully for me, after I had a good amount of time. And
Okay.
so for me, never was drinking or drugging like even an option that would creep up, like, oh, I need to go drink now. This person just died, or oh, I'm getting divorced. It was no, maybe let me go date a couple women or like venture into that area, or let me go buy something, or let me go jump out of an airplane again. Just do something that's not putting stuff in my body. Like doesn't that part of recovery doesn't have to be difficult, but yes, like I always want to continue growing, just like I'm
Yeah.
sure you do. Anybody
Yeah.
does who does personal development or emotional growth. Like we want to continue to grow. So it's not really about the drugs or alcohol anymore. But again, if I slip up, like that's over. But I just
Yeah.
want to continue to grow as a person, which is why, 2 years ago when I hit a bottom, it was like, this is not acceptable to me. This is not where I want to be, even though getting higher, getting drunk was not even like anywhere close to being a thought. It
Yeah.
could be eventually if I allow myself to keep going, because that's going to end up being my option was either I'm going to blow my brains out or do something to take away this relief. And
Yeah.
so I wanted to continue on the positive track.
Yeah. Can I take you on a tangent for a minute? Because
Please.
something that's been interesting in my personal life currently is the societal norm of alcohol. And I was listening to another podcast before where she's a recovered alcoholic, and she was saying, nobody ever asks you why you quit the drugs or why you're not doing the drugs, but everybody wants to know why you don't drink. I would love for, based on your own personal experience and helping all the people in the rehab centers that you've helped, I think alcohol is such a huge problem, but it's such a societal norm. And that's what we do when we get together, go to parties, go to sporting events, like all the things. How do people who struggle with that stay away from it? That's I can imagine that is so
Yeah.
hard because I'm guilty of it too. I don't necessarily consider myself an alcoholic. I really hope I'm not, but like yeah, I'll go to a sporting event, go to a party and have a drink or two. I don't know. I think it's such an interesting thing because it's so normal for all of us to do that if you are somebody that's an alcoholic that is struggling with that and you go to rehab and you get the help and you want to quit, it has to be one of the hardest things I think to stay away from.
Before I answer your question, let me turn it on towards you and ask you, does it make you uncomfortable if somebody's not drinking? If you're in a group of people or at a table with two or three people, you're out to eat and one of the adults is just like, no, I'm not drinking.
No, because I have experienced a lot of family members and friends that I am watching this aspect of their lives dramatically affect them. And I try to be supportive in that regard for myself too, being sensitive to that, no, being aware of that. And I'm fine. If we want to go have a coffee instead of a beer, that's fine with
Mhm.
me.
So I don't want to say like in a generalized way or like a blanket for everybody, but I have found in what seems like to me most people who are made uncomfortable by it typically have a drinking problem of their own.
Ah.
So if we're out and they're like, hey, why aren't you drinking? What do you drink? Do you go to those meetings or why aren't you drinking? Have a
Mm,
drink. It's just a drink. Just have one drink. It's whoa, why are you pushing? Because I think it's a reflection on them of maybe I shouldn't be drinking or what's wrong with
mm,
drinking? Why do they have such a problem with drinking? Whereas maybe I'm just taking some antibiotics and I'm not supposed to drink, or maybe I'm on a new antidepressant and I'm not supposed to have alcohol. So that's like the stuff we can tell newer people who maybe aren't comfortable with saying, hey, I used to have a problem. I'm not drinking anymore, or I'm not drinking right now. Tell them a medical excuse or tell them you're doing some kind of diet thing. And so you're not having alcohol right now. So like I hate to tell people to lie, but maybe that's the best thing to do in the beginning of early sobriety until you get more comfortable. And again, most people, like you said, if you're friendly and family, the people you're out with, they're not going to want you drinking. They're going to be
yeah.
glad that you're not drinking.
Yeah.
Oh, cool, you put it down. That's awesome. And I found going out with guys and going to poker night at someone's house when I used to work in the hospital in the ER, a couple of the guys who really pointed out the fact that Patrick wasn't drinking ended up being guys who had drinking problems years later.
Oh,
To come to
yeah.
find out, ran into one of them at a recovery event, and he was like, "Yeah, man, I didn't want to say anything, but I've had a problem for a while." So those are the things that happen. So if it makes people uncomfortable, they're usually going to kind of like voice up about it. And so,
Yeah. Well, and with
yeah,
women, it's always, oh, are you pregnant?
yeah,
Which
yeah.
then ends up being a different trigger for me. I'm like,
Well, there you go.
okay, give me a drink. No.
Yeah, now I'll show you. Yeah.
But that's definitely what I think with women, especially. It's just automatically assume, oh, is she pregnant? She's not drinking.
Yeah, but I think too, the last 15, 20 years with all the TV shows and celebrities, like recovery, rehab, I mean, in some ways it's a fad in some regards, right? But like
Mm,
it's like just so typical now. Like it doesn't have that connotation like it used to, where it's, oh, you're an
yeah.
alcoholic. Ugh, gross. Now it's, oh, you're an alcoholic. Cool. Come on, let's hang out. Let's go play. It doesn't matter. For most people, they don't seem to give a crap anymore. And a lot of people don't even notice. And I don't drink sodas, but I get a club soda with lime or I get a seltzer water with
Oh,
lime.
yeah. So people don't know.
It looks like a drink, but I'm not trying to hide it. But I will be with friends at a trivia night and everybody's getting beers and drinking. I'll be like, yeah, let me get a seltzer with lime. It's fine. It's not a regular flat water. It's something different to drink. And I like bubbly water anyways.
Yeah.
So, you
Yeah.
know, so there's a
Yeah.
lot of stuff you can do.
Yeah. How do you feel about, and maybe this is a better question for like earlier on in your journey about people that were drinking around you? Because, or even smoking weed, because that's
Mhm.
legal now too. So that's something you struggled with as well. So how did you
Yeah.
feel about that being around you? Were people weird about it around you for a little bit?
Well, again, I was mostly shielded from it because in the beginning I was all around recovery people. When I
Okay.
would go home to Augusta for the holidays, I'd go to a high school friend's house and they'd have a party. Yeah, there'd be a little bit of weed smoking, people drinking. I was just probably putting myself in stupid positions, probably egotistically testing myself, like, could
Ah,
I handle this? Can I do this? So it didn't really bother me. It's never really in the beginning, it never really bothered me at the moment. It was like the next day, or maybe I would end up having a weird dream that night around that, or maybe a couple of days later. So it's like that subconscious
mm,
effect that I was having from it. So consciously, I was like, nah, it doesn't bother me. It's fine. But then something else would happen that I was like, oh yeah, oh that would be nice actually. Oh, I just had that was weird. I had a using dream last night, and I haven't had one of those in a while.
mm,
So
yeah.
But today, no, like today it's cool. I don't look at alcohol as like an evil thing or like it should be taken off the shelves and we should have prohibition or anything. I wore out my uh, I forget, can't think of the word, but like I wore out my ability to do that. So you can do that's fine. Even my girlfriend now, she stopped drinking a couple years ago, but she'd have a couple of glasses of wine every night.
Mhm.
Not when we were together. And I don't like smelling, I don't like kissing somebody when they have the wine. I don't like that. But
Well, that's probably a little triggering for you to some
yeah,
degree.
yeah, it's not great. But just if I used to smoke, I quit smoking like 20 years ago, but I don't want to be around people smoking. I don't want to smell it and all that and taste that either.
So
Just
early on, did you find that it was more helpful to stay away from some of those people that were
yeah,
doing a lot of
100%.
that around
Yeah,
you?
yeah. And I was lucky. There's some people that were in recovery that were playing live music. So we'd go to open mic night or they would have a show, but they would play it sometimes at a cafe instead of a bar. Or if they did do it at a bar, there would be a group of 15 or 20 of us strong going there that were all in
Mm.
recovery that are sober. And we would more so point somebody out because we're paying attention. Wow, look at them drinking over there. They're really throwing down. Or look at that person leave. They just left half the drink on the bar. Wow, that's alcohol abuse. That kind of stuff.
Gotta
So
be so fun to just watch those people.
yeah, yeah. And we go to concerts now all the time, and I look over. I'm like, oh, that used to be me right there. That person can barely walk. They're falling over. They're laying in the grass, passed out during the concert, like totally missing. I'm like, yep, I
Mm,
remember that. So there's a lot of examples of yeah, I've definitely made the right choice.
yeah. Yeah. So I want to fast forward a little bit to, can we talk about men's mental health? Because I think that this is something that people are becoming more aware of. But men, you guys for so long have been told that you can't talk about your feelings and you can't, and you need to suppress them and you need to be a man and you need to not cry and you need to like all these things. And I love seeing that's changing in society with younger boys and the way we're raising them and stuff too. But since you work with a lot of people on that, will you speak to that?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, because we talk about the toxic masculinity, and I've found more today, like finding that balance between the masculine energy and the feminine energy. And again, that's something, like I said, I learned in my first marriage that I practice now in my current relationship, where it's about finding that balance and having that polarity with the masculinity and the femininity. Because like sometimes she wants me to open up or to be intimate and be emotional, and sometimes it's like I got to be the masculine mindset where I'm mission driven and I have a
Yeah.
goal and like I'm not going to let anything get in the way of that. I have to accomplish this, right? And I'm sure you go back and forth between those as well. And
Yeah.
so that probably blends with your husband where you guys have a mixture of that. So it's rarely that we're all one or the other, because if we are all one, then we need to be with somebody who's all the other.
Mm,
Otherwise, we're not going to have that polarity. And so what happens is I found that it's easier in recovery because I've been around a lot of guys in recovery, so they're more inclined to get
yeah.
vulnerable, but a lot of them still won't. And a lot of them,
Mm,
I just look at, I'm like, man, you're where I was, like you're sober all these years, but like, dude, life could be so much better. Like, just freaking open up, just get
mm,
real already. Would you just freaking get real? Look at the pattern of relationships you keep having, or look at the jobs you keep jumping from one job to another. I always say life is going to continue to give us the same lesson if we don't learn it, right?
mm,
So
mhm.
you're going to keep doing it. So the only way that I can help another man be vulnerable and open up is by taking the lead and doing that and
Yeah.
showing him like, look, this is what this looks like. This is what it looks like for a man to do this. And again, with neuroplasticity, it didn't kill me. I opened up to you. Did you laugh at me and point in my face and make fun of me and call me all these names? No. See, like you can do the same thing I just did for you. You can do that now. And so it helps them, even if it's just like little baby steps along the way that they do it. And ultimately, I just say, do the acid test. Look in the mirror. What do you see in the mirror? That's your acid test for like how you're doing. And if what you're doing has been working, and if it's not, why don't you try something different? Why don't you try
Yeah.
opening up? Why don't you try talking to your woman about what's really going on today? Open up to her, and or if she's opening up to you and talking to you, why don't you listen with the intent to understand rather than the intent to fix? Because as men,
Mm,
we always want to fix. And so
yeah.
that's another thing I've learned with Caitlin, my girlfriend, which is if she's going on about something, I'll sometimes say, babe, do you want me to just listen or do you want to know? Like, because I always say, it's funny because she'll tell me something and I'll catch myself doing it. I go, I'm going to give you some unsolicited advice. And she'll say, okay, go ahead. Or she'll say, I just want you to listen. Or she'll
Yeah.
say, I just want to vent. I go, cool, no problem, babe. Go ahead. And it's been really helpful because I don't know about you, but if I'm talking to somebody and they're constantly trying to fix and correct everything I'm saying, it makes me feel like I'm a broken person. So I'm like,
Yeah.
wrong with me if you're trying to fix me all the time.
Or sometimes to me, it feels I've said this straight to my husband when we've had I'll be complaining about something that happened at work with one of the other
Yeah.
girls or whatever. And then he'll come back with trying to fix it.
Hmm.
But I'm like, why are you taking her side?
Yeah.
Like, you're my husband. You should be taking my side. And so I feel like he's being then, but he's really just trying to help and fix it in the way that he knows how to do that. But I've struggled with that. I'm like, oh, no, just
Yeah.
listen and tell me that I'm not crazy and that my feelings are valid.
And she'll do the same thing. So I know ahead of time, shut up
Yeah.
and listen. Shut because yeah, we're gonna look at things more logical, where sometimes women are gonna be more in the feelings as far as the emotional side of it. So it's like they're gonna say, yeah, why are you taking her side? I'm like, I'm not taking her side, but I can see where she's coming from. But
Yeah.
that's not helping you. So I'm not gonna
No.
say anything. I'm just gonna listen to you, babe, and let you vent and then say, well, do you want to know what I would do? So it's gotten better where she'll say, if you were me, what would you do in this situation? So like both
Mhm.
of us have gotten that communication aspect better. And I can say the same thing to her. Hey, what would you do in this kind of situation? And I always try to make sure I'm not complaining because I get dumped all this negativity all day long with what I do for work. That
Yeah.
it's like, I need to be more like a vessel rather than a container because I don't want to just store and carry this
Yeah.
stuff around all day and night. So I need to, it's like therapists have a therapist, right?
Yeah.
It just like telephone, like it gets passed on. So
Yeah.
because otherwise somebody gets left with all the baggage, and
Yeah. But it sounds like communication, at least between couples, is super helpful.
it's super helpful. And yeah, and we talked briefly. I did a course recently about more so for like women. It, and I don't want to say the blanket only women and men, but like more
Yeah.
so for somebody to be able to help a struggling guy in their life. And it could
Yeah.
be a woman as well, especially same-sex relationships or whatever the case is, or maybe it's a son or a nephew. It doesn't have to be just your boyfriend or husband. And I go into a lot of the stuff about how can you basically help this guy realize like he's not in a good place, like he's not the guy you once knew, or it's things are getting stagnant, or that dude, your life could be a little bit better if you did some of these other things without nagging him and pestering him and
Mm.
making him feel like he's one of those people like, hey, I'm here because my wife made me come here. It's
Yeah.
helping him kind of like open up and see like you're at a bottom, you are at an actual bottom, and like you can get
Yeah.
off the elevator right now before it keeps going down further because maybe this marriage isn't going to last. Like how many horrible
Yeah.
relationships are out there that don't succeed, or people that are still in these unhappy relationships because they're just afraid to be alone and don't get out of the relationship.
Yeah.
But like it could be so much better. That's the stuff I've learned too, Tawny, with keeping my relationship after 7 years still fresh and still
Mm.
surprising her and still doing things that kind of keep her
Yeah.
on her toes. Because like you know how it is, you want to be wined and dined once in a while. It's not like where you want to go to eat. I don't know where you want to go to eat. I don't know. I don't care where you want to go. It's no, make a friggin' decision. Like
Yeah.
sometimes we have to take the lead, or I'll tell her like we just went and saw a Shrek musical a couple weeks ago because I know she likes Shrek and she likes musicals, and I was like, hey, wear something nice on Saturday. We're gonna go see a show. Well, what show? What kind of show? You'll see when we get there. Don't worry about it. We'll go. And we go, and she's like, oh, this is awesome. So that's the kind of stuff you want to do once in a while, if not all the time, to keep it
Mm.
alive and treat each other more like lovers and romance rather than friends and roommates because that's what my
Yeah.
first marriage turned into. We were so
Mm.
much alike. We did the same kind of work. We both worked night shift at nurses and as nurses, and we'd had so much stress and stuff, and we just became roommates. Really, is what
Yeah.
it ended up being the last couple of years or year or so. And it's like I don't want that to happen again. So I
Yeah.
am I going to learn from it? Yeah, I'm going to learn. And now I can go help some other guys that are having issues in their relationships and stuff too, or women. Like doesn't matter and
Yeah.
like say, hey, look at the feminine stuff, look at the masculine stuff, look at these characteristics. Like, are you recognizing that you are doing some, or he or she is doing some of these too, and see that like sometimes we are sacrificing our true selves because we think we need to compensate or to make up for the other person's deficiencies. So we're not
Mm.
really being true to ourselves. And therefore, we're not being true to our relationship and our love to each other.
Mm. Yeah. So in your coaching, do you primarily work with men? Is that just how it's happened or?
Yeah, I think being a man and that's primarily, and you know how it is. I don't know what the stats are, but I'm sure something crazy like 90% more women are willing to seek help than men anyways. Like you
Yeah.
said, most men don't want to be vulnerable. So
Yeah.
it pins me down a little bit, but I do coach women as well and work with women, or I work with women who want me to work with their man, which is how my last course came to be anyways. Like a lot are like, man, I'd love if my husband would talk to you, or I have this nephew or the son is struggling and man, how do I get them to like come talk to you or talk to another guy coach about stuff? So that's been how it's been playing out so far.
That's interesting. What is your advice on that? If people are trying to get the men in their lives to get help, because it's like the rehab stuff, right? Like they
Yeah.
have to want to come get
Yep.
it. So you can't make anybody do that.
Yeah. And that's what I go over in the course was like easing into the main thing is like leading by example. I'm
Hmm.
going to continue to do these healthy behaviors. Like maybe it's going to the gym or maybe it's I'm going to cook this good kind of quality of food. And hopefully you'll quit stopping at McDonald's or whatever the case is, or stop bringing home all these potato chips all the time. And let's eat these nice, clean foods that I'm starting to cook. Or maybe I'm going to just drop these little hints of this coaching work that I'm doing with this lady and see that you're going to hear and see the growth. And a lot of times the guys will acknowledge, yeah, babe, you've grown so much. I've seen so much changing. You've changed a lot, but it may not be enough for them to say, I want to do that. Or they might be afraid of saying like, how do I do that? Or I don't want to talk to a woman. I want to talk to a man. Do men even do
Mm.
this kind of stuff? Are there any male coaches that even exist? Or would it even be a guy I would even resonate with? So it's sometimes dropping hints and sometimes just having that like candid conversation. You're not the guy I married. I don't know what's happened. I know there's resentment. We maybe struggled raising the kids and now the kids are gone and now we're left with each other, empty nesters. Because a lot of times that's where a lot of divorces happen too, is when you become empty nesters. Now you don't have those distractions. So now,
Yeah.
oh, hey, remember me from 25 years ago or whatever? Now what do we do? And it's
Yeah.
about helping them see. And like you said, it might be like the rehabs, like they're just not going to get to that point. They're not going to hit that bottom. So it's about helping show them, look, you're at the bottom, if not at a bottom right now. And I love you and care about you. And I don't want to see you continue. And I not giving you an ultimatum, but like this is not working for me. Like this is not satisfactory. Like you said a while ago, like life is too short.
Yeah.
Let's have some fun. Let's do some stuff. Maybe invite the man to do stuff with you. And also like, as you said, and I said, men like to fix things. Try to get him like, hey, can I practice some of these things with you? This would really help me if we could do this.
Oh
And then
yeah.
that might help get him in the mode or find activities to do together that he's willing to do.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
hard. It's hard.
All relationships are hard. Marriage isn't easy.
Yeah, but as guys, we're stubborn. We don't want to ask for help.
Yeah, I assume that a lot of the guys coming to you, though, I mean, they're obviously seeking the help, so they're already more open than a lot of other men.
Yeah, and how much time do you want to spend with somebody who doesn't want to help, who's not going to do the work? I don't want to just take your money and help and try to help you, and
Yeah.
you're not getting anything out of it. So
Mm.
if you're not there yet, just like in the rehab, why even be here right now?
Yeah.
Like, but hopefully, my hope is just like at the rehabs that the person sticks around long enough for that thing, that light bulb to go
Yeah.
off, something to penetrate and click. So you can give different exercises, podcasts like this to listen to,
Yeah.
books to read, and hope that like something kind of resonates with them somewhere. Try to find what that where that chink is in their armor and get in there.
Yeah, because everybody's different, right? So we all have that thing that, like, I may read a self-help book that really sticks with me that I
Mhm.
absolutely love, but it may not help somebody else in the same way. So,
But it's also not going to like impact and change your life completely unless
yeah.
you put that into practical application.
Yeah. Yeah.
People can listen to us talk right now in this episode. It's not their life's not going to change forever. I've
Yeah.
listened to so many, oh wow, that's great, that's good, that's this, and then I go on to the next thing and forget all about it or whatever. So until I apply it and act it out and do it or write it down or something, like it doesn't really sink in. It doesn't change my life just by
Yeah.
reading or listening to something. Not completely, at least. It can help, I think. I might be wrong, like push me that direction to
Yeah.
actually then follow it up with some action.
Yeah. So you had your whole journey till you were 19 years old, did your rehab stint. What point after that did you come out and say, I need more work?
This was again about 2 years ago.
Just 2 years ago. Okay.
Yeah. I wasn't even aware of it. My
Oh,
girlfriend
interesting.
was working with a coach. She has a podcast. She's been doing a lot of stuff for a long time. And she's like, hey, I'm going to JJ's live event out in Southern California. I'm a little bit nervous and I know some people just over the Zoom meetings and groups we've had, but would you come with me just to help me feel more comfortable? So there's a way you can get a guy to come, right? This is a
Yeah.
perfect example. Sure, babe, I'll come with you. I'll come check it out. And I'm open-minded, being in recovery a
Yeah.
long time up to this point. Like, I'll probably get something out of this, a little self-help, woo-woo stuff. Who knows? So we go out there and we did this whole Friday, Saturday, Sunday, tons of different activities, exercises, like really good stuff, like emotional, like breakdown type of stuff, if you're willing to do it. And so what happened was on Sunday, we did a go around. We passed the microphone to say what we got out of this and what kind of transpired for us. And I'm holding the microphone. It's my turn. And Caitlin's sitting on my right side and JJ, the coach, is across the room. There's probably about 40 of us, I think. And I'm holding the microphone and I look over to Caitlin and I just say, I want to love me like you love me. I want to
Mm.
look at myself the way that you look at me. And I can't believe I'm saying this, but I don't love myself.
Mm.
And I just broke down and started crying. And I was just like, how is this possible? And it was over. And JJ came up to me. She's like, it doesn't have to end like this. I'm not saying you like work with me, but you can't just go home and go back to your life. Just like rehab. You can't just leave
Yeah.
rehab and go back to your life. Like you have to do something with this. You're at this pivotal point.
Yeah.
And I was like, cool, let's do it. I don't know what that means. Don't know what that costs. I live in Florida. You live in California. Does the Zoom thing really work? And
Thanks to
shit,
COVID.
man.
Yes.
Freaking A. And so, yeah, and I do a lot of telemedicine as a practitioner. So I get a lot of people get a lot out of it too. And yeah, I did this 6 month course. She called a deep dive course with five other people from different parts of the country. And we had in-person live retreats where we met up about 3 times that year. And we did courses regularly and we did one-on-one calls with each other and then the group calls once or twice a month. And I just had one breakthrough after another. And I was like, shit, we were talking. I was like, do you think I could do this helping guys that
Mm.
I've been just helping people in recovery, which is admirable and great, and I love it. But could I do this from a wider aspect? I'll cast a wider net and say, hey, everyday guys that don't have addiction problems, can I
Yeah.
help them too? And yeah, there's so many guys that need the help that are afraid to ask for it and don't want to be vulnerable, don't know how. That I feel like, okay, I can just be another male coach that's out there, and there's probably millions of us, but maybe somebody needs to hear and resonate with me more than they would somebody else. So sure, why not? Let's give it a try. So it's been really cool. It's been an awesome adventure. So that was something I again didn't see coming, didn't plan to
Yeah.
do. I was just like, fix me. I don't want to be this way anymore. I know I'm better than this. I've been better than this, but I was still like getting angry a lot and kind of
Mm.
popping off. I was like a pot of boiling water, just and I'm like, this is crazy. I'm 19, 20 years sober. Like, why is all this happening? No shit. You haven't worked through these core wound
Mm.
issues yet. You don't even know you have them. You don't
Yeah.
even know they're there. You just know you're mean to yourself and you don't know how to accept compliments. That's another thing. I don't know.
Oh.
I don't know how to accept. I don't know just how to say thank you. I say, yeah, because I'm always
Oh.
deflecting. And that's what somebody who doesn't love themselves does. They deflect compliments, right? They don't
Interesting.
accept compliments, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah, oh, your hair looks great. Oh, it's just this. Or, oh, I like the way that shirt looks on you or whatever. Oh, you're a great practitioner. You really do a good job. And so, yeah, yeah, whatever. But now it's thank you. I appreciate that. And I just wrap
Oh.
my arms around that and I just embrace that when I get complimented now. And now I see it in other people. So now I
Yeah.
see other people don't accept compliments when I say something nice to you. I can see that.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of
So
things
what
I've
is,
learned.
go ahead.
I was gonna say there's just a lot of things I've learned to take better care of myself and to prove to myself, yeah, I actually do love myself.
Yeah. Oh, I
Yeah,
love that for you.
yeah, yeah. Shoot up heroin at 19 years old because you're full of love and joy.
True. I'm glad you found that love. That's
Yeah.
really important. What does it look like to work with you on your coaching? Is it one-on-one? Is it courses? Is it group stuff?
So I haven't gotten too many group stuff yet, mostly one-on-one. I do have the courses, which is they're just free courses just to get to know me a little bit better, if see if it resonates. I do like free 15-minute consultations just to feel each other out because I'm also seeing, are you somebody I want to work
Yeah.
with? Are you somebody, like you said, or like I said earlier, are you really willing to do the work? I don't want to
Yeah.
just take your money if you're not really ready to get dirty and
Yeah.
down in it, right?
Yeah.
And it's cool. I like it. I've also gotten a lot into, I really like astrology, but
Okay.
not from the horoscope aspect, not like from the prediction. But that's what my coach taught me was like a lot of our horoscope based on our birth chart can tell us a lot about our personalities, the way we communicate, the way we deal with emotions, right? Like I'm an Aquarius and I have a lot of air signs in my chart. So no wonder I'm an airhead all the time and I'm racing thoughts and I'm think, so what's the solution for somebody like me? I need to be more grounded. I need to do the opposite. I need to do the meditations. I need to turn inward because when I start having feelings, I start thinking, the feelings go away. I don't allow the feelings to feel. I don't allow myself to feel the feelings and process them. I start think and then the feelings go away. So like I really love doing that. So I do that a lot on my first meeting with people. I get that information before I meet with them. And then I have some of that and I go, hey, does this resonate with you? This, because I found out for me, like a lot of it is based on that chart. Maybe I have been keeping myself from allowing myself to be that authentic, natural person that my chart says maybe I should be implementing more of these things. Like maybe I'm more of a leader than a follower in a work setting. Maybe I do better working alone, or maybe I do better working in a team job. So maybe that's why I'm so friggin' miserable at this job that I have. Or maybe I don't clash well with this boss because he's this horoscope sign and I'm this horoscope sign. And it says here that these two usually don't mix very well. Like my first wife was a Scorpio. I'm an Aquarius, and anything you look up on that romantic wise, Scorpios and Aquarius do not mix. I didn't know that at the time. It had no effect on whether or not the relationship was going to work out. It's not like I manifested that to be because I knew that. But I like that aspect of it. Again, not like from the prediction side, but just more so like the personality traits I find very fascinating. And in my first group I did, 3 or 4 out of 5 of us were all air signs. And it was funny
Oh,
to see.
wow.
We're all just like da, 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 rapid tangents, thinking multiple stuff. And then the one that's grounded and earthy is just chill, laid back. And then
Yeah.
water signs, like my girlfriend Caitlin's a water sign. She's a Cancer. So she's more, she works with horses and stuff. So she's more in the emotional, feeling and love and deep kind of aspect. And so like that, I love that. That kind of balances us out.
Yeah. I just had a guest on here a little while ago who does those astrology readings and birth chart readings and stuff. And so I had her do a birth chart reading for me for the
Oh,
first
cool.
time. And then I recorded it, and it's actually a podcast episode because this is somebody who we had a lot of similar acquaintances, but she knew nothing about me, nothing. And her podcast interview was about her personal journey and story. So she knew very little of me and my personality and my life journey. And listening to her read my birth chart, everybody that knows me that listened to that episode was like, this girl was spot on.
See, it's awesome.
It's fascinating. She actually told me there's something happening in my birth chart. I don't remember exactly what it is, but something is going to be very similar in January to when I was born. So she told me I needed to do another call then, which I haven't set up yet, but I need to definitely do that because she's like, some big's coming, Tawny. And I was
Yeah.
like, okay.
That's cool. See the
So,
way that works out. It's not predicted, whatever. It's just, I like the personality side of it.
yeah, it's really cool. And it explains a lot. I always say you can't fix a car without knowing what's wrong with it.
Hmm.
So knowing what's wrong with ourselves, for me, helps me work on bettering myself and knowing why I'm doing certain things, having a reason for it, which maybe we shouldn't need a reason, but having a reason for why I am a certain way or whatever helps me work through that to then better that in the future.
Yeah, it
So,
helps me see like where am I blocking myself and not allowing
yeah.
myself to flourish in these certain areas because I'm stuck in that complacent, this is just the way it is, and this is my job. It's 9 to 5. Maybe this is just no, get the hell out of there. Find something that really lights you up and gets you going. And maybe it's the relationship. Go find that relationship that lights you up. But if it's you, not the relationship, then the next relationship is going to end up the same way, and the one after that, and the one after that, right?
It's
So
like
don't
people who
blame.
move states or something and they're like, oh, if
Yeah,
I just move, it's going to be different.
we call it the geographical cure.
Yeah.
We call
Yeah.
it like, oh, if I move here, then I won't get drunk and high, and then I won't have this relationship. No, because everywhere you go, there you are. You take you with
Yeah.
you. So
Yeah, for sure. All right. I'm going to wrap us up because we have been talking forever and I feel like we could keep talking forever because
yeah, it's
this
been
has been an
good.
amazing conversation. What final words do you have for people listening out there?
What final words could
Could
there
be anything.
be? Just ask for help.
Mm,
Just ask for help. And like I said, if you're struggling, just do a lot of us just do the acid test, look in the mirror and see what you think about what and see what areas do you think would be better? And make a list, maybe. I tell people to do this. Make a list of like 3 to 5 goals that you have, and then write down what are the roadblocks to why you think you're not able to accomplish those goals.
Hmm.
And then you can see, is there somebody out in the world that could actually help me with that? Maybe I have a friend, maybe I have an accountant, maybe there's a coach or a therapist, maybe there's somebody that can help me who might, be a specialist in these areas that might be able to help me get to that point.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. Thank you
Yeah,
so much. Thank you, Patrick, for coming
of
on here
course.
and sharing your story. I know that's not always an easy thing to go back to, your past and sharing that. So I'm very grateful that you were willing to be vulnerable and open about
Hmm.
it. I really appreciate it. This has been a wonderful conversation.
Yeah, appreciate you having me on and enjoyed talking to you before we
Yeah,
started.
and then I will link how, if anybody wants to get in touch with Patrick on coaching, or I don't know how open you are to helping people if they're on their own sobriety journey.
Anything, yeah, of course.
Yeah, I will
Yeah,
link how to get a hold of you in the show notes. So everybody go there if you want to get a hold of him. And I think that's it. Thank
cool.
you, everybody, for listening.